You know that song? Girls Just Want to Have Fun? Cool. Okay, so here's my question. How many of you came here today thinking this TEDx was going to be fun? And you didn't all raise your hands. Okay, so the first lesson is to have fun, the first thing you got to do is intend it, because it's more likely to happen when you plan on it. But really, this is a very big topic. I thought Gino was a genius when he came up with this. So when he asked me to talk about it, I said, so what is fun? And I looked it up on Google, and guess how many entries there were? Over 3 billion. So it's a big topic. My interest in it, however, is a small piece, and that is, what's the role that conversation plays in fun? Now, I've got to keep my brain multitasking here. So it looks like a lot of people think that you have more fun when you do stuff with other people than you have all by yourself. How many people think that's true, even if it's online? Really? A lot of people think most fun you can have in the world is when you're all by yourself? That's interesting. Okay, that sort of blows a lot about how I feel about the world, but fact is, we're told by experts that we all really feel that when you have a lot of fun, it's generally with other people. It is not this. This is boredom, which is the opposite of fun. And these people haven't gotten two of the lessons. One is that you have to create your own fun. And the second is that time expands when you're bored. So they're going to be there a long time. So if you want to know the real definition for fun, which I've now looked up, it's things that cause amusement, enjoyment, and pleasure. In fact, in most cultures that we studied, pleasure is a very big component of fun. It's not the same thing as funny, although funny is important because the definition of funny that has to do with something that creates laughter is really a part of this. Because laughter as an aspect of fun means that we human beings are hardwired to have a good time all our lives. And I guess you know that of all the animals in the animal kingdom, human beings are the only one that have risibility. You know what that is? That's the ability to laugh. So one way or the other, we're already all set to have a great time. Now, how do we really go about do that? We know that people have been telling jokes from the beginning of time. And we also know that fun is now something you can tell they're trying to do it with others. But if we say that, am I speaking correctly in this? Because I'm hearing a little feedback. Okay, so people are telling jokes, and they're having fun. It's something we do with others. It amuses us, and it gives us pleasure. Lots of pleasure. So, let me go back. The role of conversation here is that it actually enables people to have fun. There's a very close connection among human beings, that they connect with each other, and it's intertwined with our ability to laugh and to talk. And we all know that we're talking a great deal, online, offline, texting, phoning, every possible way we could connect. But the fact is, at the heart of all those connections, all that talking, is what I think is the real key, that little lever to fun, and it's face-to-face conversation. In fact, I'm believing that with more and more technology, face-to-face conversation has become the new luxury. So what's the difference between talk and conversation? Well, virtually everyone, before the age of 2, all over the world learns to talk. But only a small number of people, even through adulthood, ever learn how to converse. And that difference between talk and conversation, that disparity can be the difference between a chat and a real relationship, between an okay talk and a lot of fun. So how do we do that? Creating really measurable exchanges, the kind that leave people saying, wow, that was fun, is something, it's actually a skill that can be acquired. And creating meaningful exchanges so that they're really powerful these days when we're surrounded by chatter and really hungry for connection. This is a strategic tool that really can put you in a great place. So the difference, we said, is this. Talk is one way. You tell me something. You show me something and talk about it. You give me an advertisement and tell me why I should like your product and then hope that I will buy it. It's one way. Conversation is another animal entirely. It always involves two people or more. It's highly collaborative, and it's a catalyst for really expanding relationships. So the one very cool thing about authentic conversations is that something new can be created by these two people that didn't exist before. Something new, and that something new actually could be fun. I think it is no accident that in the English language, the word intercourse is actually the word used to define both sexual union and active conversation. How'd that happen? Well, in both cases, people give and they get, right? In both cases, you experiment a bit and you have to practice, and it's not always great. So what makes a great conversation? In my mind, it's that people come into that conversation intending to be changed by it. And the same thing is true when they want it to be fun. You come into it with the intent to be changed by it. So if that's true, are we human beings having fun yet in this conversational malaise that we've seemed to have stepped into? We can look historically and see that the Greeks had there were actually little pockets of people and pockets of culture historically where conversation was really raised to an art. The ancient Greeks had their Socratic dialogues. The French in the 17th century had salons where conversation was so critically important it actually determined the political and the social future of the country. And there have been other cases, British Parliament and so on, where they took conversational sparring and turned it into an art. So what about the rest of the people in those cultures, in those times? The fact is, we'd think, gee, they must have had great conversations because they all lived and were born, lived, and died in places very small, and they had a lot of time on their hands, we like to think. The fact is, that's not the case. They didn't have much exposure to other things, but the fact is they worked all the time. Manual labor, taking care of their children in their household, and work wasn't intended to be fun. So most talk was talk about work. So we'd say, well, then aren't we lucky? Because we now live in an age where appliances do everything, and we've got all this technology, we can connect with people all over the world. Must be amazing. We must be having great conversations. Well, maybe not so much. Because what happened? What happened is that let me ask the question. How many people go to bed and sleep with their smartphone? Come on, you're not being honest. Now you're being honest. Okay, if it's not in the bed with you, it's next to you, right? So we are living in a 24/7 world of communications, and we are being bombarded with stuff all the time. It's a universe of noise. It's 24/7. I believe that we've actually entered an age of informational obesity. We are gorging on data that frankly doesn't feed us intellectually and doesn't nourish us spiritually or socially. I'm not saying that all the data isn't very valuable, but a lot of the stuff we do because it's there. While we had this recent election in America, I found myself so falling in love with Nate Silver that I checked his data 20 times a day. But I didn't need to do that. I was addicted. So we could say, well, for us then, there is this kind of tremendous obesity of data going on. What about kids? That's the place to start, right? They could learn how to have real conversations. Well, I'm told that, in fact, our kids are getting more addicted than we are, because in fact that's all they really are going to know. And in some cases, people feel that it's so important now, since we know what global success can mean, that we have parents who in fact are so programming their children. Do you know about this book? Amy Chaw's book on how to be a tiger mom or a tiger dad? It says that you really are in charge of how your kids live their lives as children, and you should in fact be very involved in their conversations. So that sounds like it's a little tough road to hoe. How about the teens and young adults? That's the place, right? Because no matter what you do with them, teens are really out there experimenting. That's when they form their real friendships. That's when they flirt a lot. They're having sexual experimentation. That should be a great time, right? Well, that's got a little bit of a problem. You know what it is, right? Oops, this thing, right? Oh dear, I love this slide. Can anybody help me here? It's this one. Okay. Okay, so what happens now is that we really don't do things that are naughty. And why is that? Teenagers have had a very chilling effect on the fact that everybody can take a picture of everything they do if they don't take it themselves, and they can tell all their friends about it. So all that irresponsible stuff that we like to do as teenagers, whether it's getting drunk, standing on a table in the restaurant, jumping in the pool with no clothes on, jumping in the pool with all our clothes on, those things that we did and then would like to forget about because they were growing up, they were our signs of maturation, they're now sort of indelibly all over the world. And so we understand anyway that there is much less of that kind of irresponsible behavior. You know who this guy is? The potential future King of England? Well, some people said he should have been really admonished for that behavior in Las Vegas. And other people said, he's just doing what young guys do. Did that hurt anyone? Well, the fact is, there are no secrets anymore, and that's part of what this whole conversational thing is all about. So let's go to a place that's probably really safe to discuss conversation and how it works. That kind of relationship that's supposed to be lifelong, marriage. How about marriage? Isn't that where you should be together for life and you have very intimate and close conversations? Well, the fact is a very important study was done by Delma Hine, a psychologist and couple therapist in America, and she surveyed a large group of married American women. And her question was, what motivated you to marry that guy who's now your husband? And over 75% of the people who responded said, well, I thought he'd be a good father, and I thought he'd be a good provider, and he'd be an upstanding member of the community, you know, real responsible stuff. But a few, under 20% of the women said, I married this guy because I thought it would be really fun. But here's the great part. I don't know how many of you are living in cultures where you could have your marriage arranged for you, right? Nobody here. So you have the same choice these women and these men did. And here's the interesting part. The people who married for fun turned out to have longer lasting marriages and reported that they were more successful and happy than the other ones. And they attributed at the top of their list of what made it work, face-to-face conversation. We talk about everything, the bad stuff, the serious stuff, and the really fun stuff, because having a sense of humor is really important in marriage. Do you agree? Okay. So, what makes stuff fun? Well, we put a lot of value, we get a lot of pleasure out of a relationship in which we feel we are valued, in which people think we are pleasing, in which there is just some amusement involved. And so it's important for us, if we want to do that, to make sure that we're entering conversations with that intent. So maybe if it's a little bit of work, we could ask ourselves, why is this so important? Well, it's important if you want to have the kind of relationship we just talked about these American couples having. It's important if you really want to engage with people at work, because they're looking for fun now too. It's also really important if you want to be a leader, because people now want to work for companies that are fun. It's not like the days when they were just trying to make a living. And in fact, many companies are emulating what Steve Jobs did, in which he said, I want a company where we don't tell people what to do, although he was famous for doing exactly that. But we at least want them to have the illusion that they are part of the conversation about what is going to happen in this company. And what's important is that companies are not only engaging their employees, they've now figured out how to engage their customers. So all of you who are in the marketing business know that the whole game has changed in the last couple of years. You don't tell people what you're selling and then sell it to them. You engage people in a conversation. And in fact, what's great about it is that they will help you shape the very products and services that you want to sell. So if companies can figure out how to, and by the way, they're making fans of their brands, right? People love this. It's fun. They have games. They have all kinds of sweepstakes. It's a lot of fun to be a customer, as Eric told us. So if companies can do this, what about you? What are the tips that you should have for actually thinking about how to have a great conversation? First of all, I think it's really important, no matter how cool all this technology is that's coming out of Hong Kong, use it as a tool. Don't use it to replace face-to-face conversation. It's a fabulous way to enhance it, but it's not a replacement for it. And I know, because I hire people, that a lot of people come into a company without even the barest ability to know how to have a conversation. And they're never going to be the ones that lead the company. So also, take time to make a date with somebody, put your smartphone away, and have time to talk. Don't tell people what you want them to know about you, just like companies have figured out. Ask them what you should know about them. And go on a data diet, for heaven's sakes. Quit ingesting all that empty data that you don't really need. And how about your kids? I think you should have a conversation with your kids. Stop entertaining them and telling them what to do, and instead engaging them in conversations around what they've decided are fun. And I guarantee you that they will tell you when they're adults that those were some of the best pieces of their childhood. So I'd like to leave you with two questions. One is, should we set up conversational skills training in every school in the world so that kids really do know how to carry on conversations and then use technology to really use it powerfully? And secondly, how do we change coffee houses so that they're really places where you have a conversation the way Howard Schultz, no, what's his name? Not Howard Schultz. Yeah. How he intended when he brought this thing from Italy for the rest of us, because he really intended that we talk. And if you go to Starbucks in America, everybody's on a computer. My wish is that every day you initiate at least one conversation just for the heck of it, for fun. And lastly, the reason I say that is because I don't want you to get old and look back and say, are we having fun yet? Thanks.